Let's bring in my good friend, Sports Medicine Center Akron Children's Hospital, Dr. Joe Congini with us. And Joe, good morning. Thanks for joining me again, my friend.
Hey, Ray. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course.
And I did want to talk a little about some of the heat. I mean, how could we not?
Right.
And there have been some changes. But I also wanted to mention to the community of Akron, the entire community, I was with people from the OHSAA on the weekend as they had the state championships down at Canal Park, and they just rave reviews for our town of how much hospitality, of how people felt welcomed with open arms, on all the teams to an absolute team, everybody who came to Akron to play at Canal Park, saying how hospitable people were, how nice people were, how great the facilities were, and so really a pat on the back. They'll be back again next year. They'll be back. I think they signed a couple-year contract. So it's really good for our town, and the support was great. The weather was great. Everything about the weekend in the state championships in baseball in Akron were great.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and they signed that new 3-year contract, so it's going to stay here. You wanted to talk about heat this morning.
Yeah, I do. I mean, Ray, I think most people are aware heat is the number one weather-related death in the thing that causes death in the United States, weather-related event. And it's been that way for about 30 years or so, number one. And, of course, it's very dangerous to everyone. A day like today, especially our senior adults, our medically vulnerable people, all at really high risk. And so today's a day that we worry a lot. Specifically in the sports medicine world, I wanted to touch on a couple of points because I mentioned a month ago we had a meeting in May, and we do these things kind of pre-season to make sure that everybody is up to date on those catastrophic things that can happen to athletes that can cause life-threatening or death-related issues like heat and heart and head. And we talked about heat. And they already made a few modifications or adjustments that I wanted to touch on. While they were in town last week, they updated me on a few things. Number one, we talk a lot about this fancy thermometer that they have. It's called a wet bulb globe temperature. I've heard about it throughout my whole career of 35 years. Honestly, I haven't known what they are, but they keep getting better all the time, and they're less expensive all the time. And the OHSAA had a number of this type of thermometer available. We actually picked up 15 of them and passed them out to some local Akron area schools that didn't have them since our meeting in May. But they still, I believe, at the OHSAA, just with a phone call, have this available. But what it does, Ray, is it measures temperature, humidity, wind, and solar radiation, and it gives the trainers that are overseeing the practice and the coaches the exact heat index down on the field they're playing on the soccer field, on the football field, and it's exact. So it's not like looking at your phone for a heat index. It really takes into account all four of those areas that I talked about. So the wet bulb globe temperature is really important, and they made some modifications based on some studies in Georgia and Florida in the year 2019 and 2020. So they are really right updated with the most recent data. It's almost like a play sheet that a coach has with a bunch of different colors on it, Ray, and the trainers have these. And when you get into different colors, today I'm sure would be the hottest red color on the sheet, and probably the recommendations at midday would be no practice at all. But it makes recommendations of how long a team can practice and how much when they may be at risk, and a lot of it comes from this fancy thermometer. So if your school doesn't have a wet bulb, the OHSAA has many that you could pick up and call them. So that was number one slight modification. Number two, there was a lot of discussion in May about the acclimatization period, and the OHSAA built in 5 days, Ray, that people are supposed to acclimatize before they can have their first practice in August. But what happens a lot of people say, I'm going to do my acclimatization day on July 5th or July 8th. I'm going to do 2 of them and then go on vacation and come back. And the studies really show that if you don't do these acclimatization days immediately before you start into the season. And if you don't do them consecutively, they're not nearly as effective. So if you do them weeks in advance, they're not going to get you as ready for the heat. And so the strong recommendation from our state OHSAA is to do these consecutively and very soon before the season, and so that all the trainers and coaches know that's really what we're shooting for before approximately August 1st when all our teams get playing again. So remember the modifications in the acclimatization days. The third thing is, everybody, we always shy away from this one because it's not fun, but the strong recommendation nationally and from our state body is to make sure that all the sports medicine teams have thermometers, particularly rectal thermometers. It's far and away the most accurate, and when kids are starting to slip into what might be heat stroke, it really helps us know, is it a full court press, and calling 911, do we have to get them into the cold water immersion tub and really bring their temperature down right away. That number is 105. When they get above 105, they have about 20 minutes to a half hour before they could lead to death from heat. So thermometers, if you don't have them, get them now too, and especially rectal thermometers. Those are three modifications or strong amplifications that the OHSAA made while they were in town last week, and I just wanted to touch on those. When we got back from our meeting, we went down to our foundation to see if we could raise some money because there were about 5 or 6 schools that didn't have the cold water immersion tubs. And hats off to our group at Akron Children's. They went right to work trying to find money. These tubs are not all that expensive, from what I hear, in the range of $350 to $400 to get these immersion tubs. And they got some for some of the schools, or working on getting some for the schools that don't have them now. So those are a few of the changes, Ray, that came up even this week while we had the Ohio high school people in town. They're trying hard to have the very best of rules, especially when it comes to life-threatening stuff. And today is a life-threatening day. So everybody really, for everybody, and especially non-athletes too, senior adults, medically vulnerable, take it easy today. Today's going to be a day, today and tomorrow, where we really could get into trouble with heat.
You're right, Joe. You know, a lot of people are doing that training, right? They run, they hike, they do those things to get ready for either the fall sports or just stay in line. And this is a day, and I'm sure you would recommend jumping into that doctor arena here to tail it back quite a bit when you're talking upper 90-degree temperatures.
Yeah, and you also, as you always do, and you inform us so well, this is one of those days, and it's kind of rare in Northeast Ohio. The heat's not going to let up all the way till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tonight. It's not letting up much at all. So a lot of times in our area of the country, particularly with the wet bulb, you can check that temperature again at 7 o'clock while it's come way down, or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock when we get into August. I think today's going to be one of those days that it's just best to put it on the side, or if you can get into an air-conditioned place, but I'd stay out of the heat today pretty much all day long.
All right, Joe. Great visit, my friend. Glad to have you back with me again on Wednesdays. We'll reconnect again next week. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Ray.
Dr. Joe Congini, Sports Medicine Center, Akron Children's Hospital, joins me Wednesdays here on 93.5, 1590 WAKR.